Hey everybody, this video is going to be about what I learned as information processing. Nowadays you might call it comprehension, perception, or I've even seen the term interpretation. And we're going to look at that process. And in life, and nowadays with marketing, we have to deal with all those different stimuli out there, right? A stimulus is something that we can sense or perceive. So the basic model looks like this. We're exposed to a stimulus or not. We pay attention to the stimulus to some degree or not. We go through comprehension, perception, or interpretation. We attach some meaning to the stimulus and what it means for us. And then finally, then we stick it away in memory through basic associations that we form, and it's a piece of knowledge. And we've looked at that already, so really we're going to focus on exposure, attention, and comprehension. So, what's exposure? That just means that a stimulus is close enough proximity for us to sense, see, feel, hear, smell, or taste. Now, I do this, and this is not really about an individual stimuli and whether we're exposed to it or not, stimulus I should say, but this is in general in terms of thinking about marketing communications. So it's just a basic graph that says, hey, on this vertical axis here is awareness, or brand awareness, that, hey, we realize, that something is out there, and then we remember that. And then on the x-axis, the horizontal axis, is the number of times we're exposed to that marketing communications. All right, and I'll give you an example. And this, I have to go to YouTube, and actually I like this ad a lot. But this played in the Super Bowl in 2021. Dr. Squatch. I have no idea if you've ever heard of that. Whoops.
Your soap is ugh, and your body wash is a synthetic detergent. But you're not a dish. You're a man. Switch to Dr. Squatch Natural Soap for Men. For men who build things. Open pickle jars on the first try. Slay dragons. And let their daughters braid their hair. Men who like to feel good and smell. Titillating. Dr. Squatch takes you places you never thought you'd go. Naked.
Okay. So that played in the Super Bowl in 2021. All right. Dr. Squatch has been a very successful online brand. With sales, I believe, in, close to $2 million. And the question is, spending another probably $5 million for that ad, is it worth it? All right, and that's really the kind of the idea behind this curve here. And so the idea is, it's an S-shaped curve if you laid it on, stood it up kind of more upright. So, in the beginning, relatively few exposures, right, as we move on the horizontal axis to the right, where to the right is more, don't have much effect in building people's awareness. Right, one or two won't really do very much, and depending upon the situation, it's going to take a number of them, right? And so when they start to become effective, that's known as the absolute threshold. It's the minimum that you need to, in this case, marketing communications, the minimum you need to invest in to have any impact at all. And then once you hit that absolute, you can see that the awareness, as the curve goes up very steeply, increases rapidly with relatively fewer exposures. And then it reaches a peak, the terminal, the maximum, right? Even though you're exposed more often, it's not going to change your understanding, your perception, how you feel. All right, so just think about it. Like how many, I think it's on the next slide, but, all right, how many Geico ads have you seen? How many, progressive ads have you seen? How many? Well, you haven't seen many Bud Light ads lately, but certain beer commercials. You've seen them enough times where, is the ad having any real impact on how you comprehend the brand, your ability to remember it? Probably not. So why do companies do that? A lot of times, well, maybe there's some research that supports it, but usually, as people change jobs and you get new brand managers, they're kind of afraid, to change what's worked. And so they don't want to be the person that decreases the number of exposures, cuts down on the amount of marketing communications in a certain channel, and all of a sudden brand sales go down. So they tend to maintain them. Where it might be, smarter to not necessarily change the number of exposures, but change the format. Do more digital, do more events, do different types of exposures. But so again, there's a sweet spot above the minimum where people kind of remember, oh yeah, I think I saw that. And then below the top where you already know it, and at some point you get sick of those ads. You don't even want to watch them anymore. Okay, and luckily for us nowadays, you don't have to. Unless it's on the internet, it's following you around and you keep seeing the same pair of boots or shoes or whatever it is, and then you start to dislike the brand. So, this is basically what I just said. So, absolute or minimum, terminal or maximum. All right, and so those are important because if you're spending not enough, you might as well not spend any money because you don't have enough ads to be effective. And if you have too many ads, you're wasting money that could be better spent or invested in other parts to support your brand. So this is what we just talked about. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but that small companies struggle. Right, so Dr. Squatch must be doing pretty well, and if they were smart about it, and I have no idea, they would have felt that, hey, they're ready to reach out to some people that they have a hard time reaching digitally through the Super Bowl ad. And maybe as they'll ramp up even more YouTube advertising and whatever they do, that's where I first saw them, and it will lead to more people understanding the brand, following the brand, and ultimately buying the brand. All right? And then big companies, as I said, they're reluctant to reduce their advertising. But you want to stay in that sweet spot there. Okay, so what happens over time? Adaptation. So what is adaptation? Well, it means that the same stimuli no longer, we don't sense them as much. We already know them. We kind of ignore them. And I'll give you an example. I got my master's at the University of Lowell, and I lived on Merrimack Street, which was a very busy street and not the greatest neighborhood. And right across the street was a boarding house where there was a lot of drunks and drug addicts, and there's always a lot of stuff going on. And I lived in a triple-decker on the third floor, so I could hear everything and so forth. And there are cars going by fast and crashing. And before that, I had been living in East Hampton, Connecticut, in a very rural place where going to bed at night, it was always quiet. And I went there to go to school to get my master's as a graduate assistant and coach. And first month, I couldn't sleep. It's just too noisy, right? I didn't have air conditioning, so I had to leave the windows open in August. And it was just way too noisy. Just people, cars, accidents, sirens, people yelling, making a ruckus in the street because they've been drinking a lot. And what do you know? After about a month, I had no problem sleeping. I adapted to it. My brain got used to hearing them, knew what they were, so we could tune them out. And not, it wouldn't go past exposure. I would not, my body, my brain wouldn't pay any attention to them at all because we knew what they were. We'd seen them a lot. They're no longer effective. And so, you can think about it. How long can you run an ad for? An ad campaign. All right, so I'm going to play this video for you on Bud, which this is a little bit older. I don't know what their most recent campaign has been other than, the problems they had with the trans woman. But it was Dilly Dilly. And it's just interesting to hear the the executive talk about it, but it was wildly popular for them. But like everything, there comes a time when it has to end. So let's go watch this interview and on the Dilly Dilly by Bud Light. Here we go.
You are a true friend of the crown. Dilly Dilly.
Dilly Dilly. Dilly Dilly. What the hell does Dilly Dilly mean?
Dilly Dilly doesn't mean anything. And that's the beauty of it. I think that we all need our moments of nonsense and fun. And I think that Dilly Dilly, in a way, represents that.
Dilly Dilly. Dilly Dilly.
A lot of people ask me, how did you approve that?
Dilly Dilly.
Dilly Dilly.
Dilly Dilly.
Dilly Dilly.
To tell you the truth, we never expected this to be so successful.
Dilly Dilly?
It didn't test that well. We did that ad actually because of the new season of Game of Thrones coming. But when we tested and didn't test that well, we said consumers will get it. And especially with repetition, we have a chance here for this to become big.
Dilly Dilly.
So we went against the research and we gave a chance to Dilly Dilly. And we are so happy.
Dilly Dilly.
I think that one of the proofs of success nowadays, from a cultural standpoint, is when you go to Amazon and you don't do anything. There are people already selling T-shirts. 2 weeks ago, I went on Amazon. There were like 10 different types of Dilly Dilly T-shirts. I said, yes, that's it. It becomes a cultural currency.
You're suing all those people, right? So
No.
Be the sole
We
provider.
want everybody to dilly dilly in their life, so no problem.
Dilly Dilly. Dilly Dilly.
We are going to bring more fun, more dilly dillies. Super Bowl is pretty close. Maybe we'll surprise you with the dilly dillies. I don't know, maybe.
Okay, so pretty fascinating. So Dilly Dilly wasn't a big hit. Supposedly going to be a big hit, and they were able to, go against the wisdom of the research and use their gut, and they were right. But they had to end it at some point. One of the other ones, I'm not going to show you the video, was Dos Equis kind of came out of nowhere, though it was a well-known beer, with their ad campaign for the most interesting men in the world. Right, and they had the guy do a whole bunch of ads. They're really well written. One of my son's best friends actually won a contest and met the actor who did that, and so forth. But after a while, they ended it, and maybe it just didn't resonate anymore. Or people were adapted to it, right? So adaptation's tough, right? But they, now they haven't been able to really position the brand in any meaningful way. They've tried a bunch of different things, and I don't think it's really worked for them. And their sales have suffered some. And, the brand that's really come up a lot is Modelo, who has very clear positioning. But, one way to kind of resist adaptation, in my opinion, is do what like Allstate, Flow, Geico, Budweiser, and Budweiser does it, but have an ongoing almost series and characters. And so, especially with humor and introducing new people, Allstate's back with Mayhem, right? The Mayhem guy left for a while, and they brought him back, all right, to bundle, auto and home and so forth. And another way to help is, use product placement. Put your product out in the TV shows, the pictures, video, anywhere you can that people are watching content. And, that's another way to minimize adaptation. And then, it's important to test, right? If people see your ad too much, after a while, they're going to have a negative attitude. They're sick of it. They're tired of it, right? You're taking up their time. Now, maybe it's not a big issue nowadays because we're so good at avoiding advertising. But, liking has this concave curve where after a while, if liking's on the vertical axis there, that it's going to nosedive with too much. Same old, same old. is boring. I don't need to pay attention to it. I already know. Okay. So, what do you think a smoker does when they see this ad without really reading it? Okay, with a hole in the throat. Okay. What do we do after the team, that just scored a touchdown kicks the extra point? When we're watching on TV, do you click? Right? What do you do when a salesperson starts to walk you towards you in a store? Do you turn the other way? Walk away from them? Phone call from an unrecognized number? Nowadays you can't afford to pick it up because it could be somebody's, zero thing, types of, I don't even know what to call that, or like, where you don't have to do anything. You just pick up the phone and answer it, and you can get charged. You can get scammed for a whole bunch of money. Okay. When do we look at the hamburger before we look at that couple there? All right. So, exposure, right? We have the ability to kind of select what we want to see, be exposed to, right? So this is a term we'll use throughout this model on all different levels, is selective exposure, right? So a person will often avoid or purposely expose themselves to certain stimuli, right? Because we know what's coming, and if we want to hear it, like, you see me walking down the hall and you're at the other end of the hall and you skip class and you miss the test, well, you might turn around and go, quickly turn around and go down the stairs and get on another level, or duck into a classroom not to see, me or the professor that you were avoiding. That's selective exposure, all right? And so, it's an issue. That's what a remote control does. We avoid salespeople, all that kind of stuff. So, what determines, what influences selective exposure? Whether we want to be exposed to it or we want to avoid it. Right? Our current needs. I'm hungry. So when I'm hungry, I might pay attention to that hamburger instead of that couple there. All right? Involvement. Involvement, again, is what's personally relevant to us. What's important. All right? How do non-believers handle news about climate change? They avoid it, deny it exists, claim it's fake news, science is BS, fake news, poor management, deep state, all bunch of stuff. But a lot of times they avoid hearing it, paying attention to it, won't listen. Okay, get on Twitter and refute it is a way of kind of selective exposure, even though they're responding to it. They're saying, hey, I'm not really paying attention to this at all. All right? And hand in hand with that, which is a little ahead of where we're going, is, we have this bias, as all humans do, is called confirmation bias. So we have certain beliefs, and it's much nicer and feels better, and it makes us happier in some way when we're right. So we like to confirm our existing beliefs, that the way we see the world is the way the world is. And so we tend to, take things where maybe it's not clear exactly, that it's open to interpretation, and we'll interpret in a way that's consistent with what we believe. So if I have a student and I think she's a really good student and, she doesn't do well on the test, and then when I give back the test, she sniffles a little bit, like that, and that's not crying, but she might be sick, I'll probably say, oh, well, no wonder she didn't do well. She's sick. Because that keeps my beliefs about her being a good student, they're safe. They're not disconfirmed. We don't like disconfirmation that we're wrong. Oh, that's not true. That's not the way it is. I misunderstood. We don't like those things. So, even scientists trained in, scientific method, which is, hey, it's, you can never prove something is absolutely true, but you can prove it's more likely to be true if you can't disconfirm it. And so the goal is to do a test where, hey, there's a good chance it can be disconfirmed if it's wrong. And scientists are biased, and how they handle the results and everything, or design the tests, they can be biased. As a matter of fact, I just read an article in Google News that there's a group of people going out there and debunking cheating scientists because I need to write papers to keep my job. All right, research papers to keep my job at this expensive research institution or college. I want to be famous. All right, I want to be better than my peers. All that stuff can lead to confirmation bias. Okay, exposure. So there's two types: accidental, right, and intentional. So most marketing we see is accidental exposure, meaning we're not on the internet to look at the display ads, or we're not on social media to see the ads that come up on social media. We're there for other reasons. Intentional exposure, all right, is when we want to be exposed to marketing stimuli. So we go to the company's website, and we look at the facts. We go to a review site and we look at that information. We go to the store and we talk to the salesperson. All right. So, it used to be that most marketing was just accidental exposure, and it was hard, a lot of times before the internet to get, provide people the information when they wanted it. How do they let you know? Yeah, they go to the store, but if you didn't have a lot of stores or it wasn't convenient, how would they get information? So the internet, all the digital marketing, email, websites, etc., social media sites owned or operated by, companies makes it so much easier, right? But really, a lot of our exposure is accidental. We're not looking for that. And even though we talk about content marketing, being brought in by digital marketing, where you create websites and social media where there's information, content that people want, and your brand is part of it, but that's not the main thing. That's the way to draw more people in, build a relationship with them. But there's still a lot of quote push marketing, done even digitally. All those display ads, and they're maybe a little more targeted to what you want potentially, but they're pushing a marketing stimuli onto their potential customers. So let's wrap up exposure right here. Let me just get all this stuff up here. Okay, exposure, close enough to sense. Hey, not enough. If my voice drops, it's you can't hear me. You can't hear me after a while, right? Minimum. After a while, too much. It doesn't have any impact. Adaptation. You got to keep changing the message in some way. All right, and then intentional versus accidental. So it's easier, but when people want it, you have to be able to give them information. You have to be able to detect that, make sure it's easy for them to get, and then you still need to do accidental exposure, right? You still need to get your name out there in whatever way you do it. There are less disruptive ways or ways than advertising, commercials and stuff, but there's still lots of different ways. Then finally, selective exposure, right? People have a lot of tools and they're really good at screening, stimuli as they start to sense them and say, I don't want to believe this, I don't want to see this I do want to see. And it's really a focus of what your current needs are, what's important to you. So whatever hobbies, teams you follow, fashion, different things that you like, you pay attention to that stuff, right? You want those things in, right? It's not accidental, all right? And then also what your current beliefs are. If they confirm existing beliefs, we tend to let that pay attention or let that stimulus, be exposed to it. And if it disconfirms, hey, that's not gonna happen to me. I'm not gonna get cancer, all right, and so forth. We tend to push it away. All right, so that's exposure. The next is attention, all right? And attention just means that, okay, we are exposed to it, all right? Our sensory memory looks at it, and then, whatever it kind of is, and we're not really going through, that's part of what we do, our brain does, but we're making, we kind of recognize it or we don't recognize it. Those pieces of knowledge, bubble up to the surface and pop, and we go, oh, it's this, it's that, or whatever, okay? And then we have to decide, hey, do I want to focus more of my cognitive resources? Do I want to take it in, try to understand it, okay? Or do I want to not pay attention to it? All right, so it's the same kind of deal as with exposure. Okay, now I'm paying attention to it. Is it worth paying attention to? All right, and remember, workbench and memory, is really not, we don't have a lot of capacity. All right, so that's really the issue. And because of that, attention is selected by nature. We can't pay attention to everything. It's impossible. And, I remember reading this a while ago, and it was like, if you walked into a grocery store and you could pay attention to all the marketing in that, including the products with their brand names on it, you'd need a head the size of a cubic light year. So we can't. So, we are strategic by nature. Right? We're selective of what we want to pay attention to. All right? And, if anybody knows, either has or knows somebody who had attention deficit disorder, my younger brother did, and he had it really strong. And somebody described it once as being on a Ferrari with bicycle brakes, in that, things come along, you can't slow anything down because you're always paying attention to the next thing. You can't be selective. You can't focus. You can't say, wait a minute, I'm going to spend more time on this. And that, how exhausting that would be. As my brother would always say, it's just you can't stop and focus because it keeps moving. It's like you're, caught in a river that's flowing or a river flowing by you really fast, and you can't stop it, and you see everything. So anyway, attention is selected by nature, and obviously it's really important to marketers, because if they don't pay attention to your marketing communications, you're out of luck. All right. So attention can be voluntary and involuntary. Right, involuntary attention, the amount of attention we pay to a stimulus, a loud noise. Oh, maybe I clap my hands and that startled you because you're falling asleep because it's kind of boring. Normally in class I'd scream or yell and I'd get everybody's attention. Oh, what's that? Right, okay. And so there's certain things. Hey, and why do we do that? Because certain noises or things or stimuli are, could be dangerous. It could be opportunities, but most of the time it's like, oh no, right? So back in the day, you're walking at nighttime, or you're walking through the woods, and you hear the rustle of, there's some kind of animal nearby you, you're going to pay attention. All right? Okay. So, and actually that was an example of voluntary attention, right? Where we deliberately select, what to pay attention to. All right, so that would be like you being the right person in class and listening to the professor instead of listening to a couple of students who are talking right near you. So, marketing implication, right? Marketers try to gain involuntary attention with many of their stimuli, right? Display ads, okay, all that kind of stuff, movement, and we'll talk about some of the ways to get attention, all right? But gaining voluntary attention is critical nowadays, all right? That's customer engagement. You want customers, voluntarily paying attention to your brand, right? That's part of being in a relationship, all right? And so you really need to figure that out. You need to be responsive, okay? When consumers place voluntary attention on our stimuli, right? We need to give them feedback, right? Not make it a one-way, communication is a two-way process technically. So we need to make it a two-way process. So we respond in some way, right, to our potential customers, and that's a good way to keep them voluntarily looking for stimuli from us, and they're being willing to pay attention to it. Okay, so what factors tend to capture our attention? This is kind of the fun part here. Okay, so we'll get to the fun part in a minute. Affect, moods, right? We're in a good mood, we pay attention to good, happy, positive things. We're in a bad mood, that life sucks, I can't believe this, look at this, this place stinks, I'm looking at the classroom I teach in, and I'm not in a good mood, and I wish it was more up to date, and it's a chalkboard, and all that kind of stuff. All right, so involvement, right? So a lot of these they're present in all stages of this kind of comprehension model. Personal importance. Hey, if it's important to me, yeah, I'm going to pay more attention. Okay, if it's not important to me, in marketing, hey, if it's a brand I like or something something I'm really interested in, okay, like shoes, all right, or cars, okay, or cannabis or whatever it is, I'm gonna pay attention. If it's something it's not important to me, I'm not gonna pay any attention. I'm not gonna waste my time, all right. I'm not gonna waste cognitive resources. Okay, our current needs. Okay, yeah, obviously, I'm hungry, right? And for food, I'm gonna pay attention to it. Where can I get that food? I'm hungry. It looks good. Maybe that's what I want to eat. All right, where's that restaurant? Oh, yeah, I'm gonna go on Yelp, and there I go. Okay, so our current needs are a big source, right? Nothing really too different. Always important to us, right? That means we're selfish, okay, which is a good thing, especially back in the day, long time ago. What was important to us? Resources like food, water, shelter, our group, family, tribe, whatever, okay, that we belong to, our social unit, and so forth. So we pay attention to those things, right? And then, we're driven by our needs, right? The more basic needs, the more driven we are. But still, friendships, feeling attractive socially, you go up Maslow's hierarchy of needs of physiological needs, safety, right, belongingness or love, self-esteem, esteem needs, and then finally whatever self-actualization is. Those are all things that, can drive our ability to, or likelihood of paying attention to a stimulus. All right. So let's look at these two ads, and we're going to go through this list of kind of involuntary tools that you can use to grab people's attention.
It's so amazing it'll shave off every hair on your face. Oh no, I'm a hair. You're about to get shaved. Oh no! Wait, we sure had a lot of fun times together, didn't we? Remember that time in the amusement park? It was the best day of my life. I'm sorry! Old Spice electric shaver. It's sharp. That's one sharp shaver.
I like when he's lying there with no lower ankles. His legs have been cut off above his ankles there. That's pretty funny. Okay, and here's another one. Okay, so I think you got the idea there. So let me go back. So we call these types of techniques to grab attention environmental prominence. Just means that, hey, as we're looking at the environment, wherever we are, not the nature, but something that's prominent, that really stands out, will often capture our attention involuntarily, that we pay attention to it. All right? So the first idea is intensity, right? The more intense it is. That's the Terry Crews Old Spice ad. It's kind of funny, all kind of stuff, which can include some other stuff. But he's yelling, grimacing, making loud noises, the thing's sideways. So it's just so much going on, we tend to pay attention to it. It's like if I was to scream in the class, everybody pays attention, even the people who are on their phone not paying attention, because I scream, because it's really loud. It's intensity. It could be color, it's any type of kind of, extrasensory stuff that you put out there. All right, movement. All right, so, our brain is trained really to follow movement. Why? Well, because, when things are moving and when we're living in the bush, it's either food or a potential threat. And think about it, if you play a sport where you pass a ball or kick a ball to somebody, you share something, right? It's really hard sometimes to see somebody who's like open if they're standing still, because our eyes don't really pick it up unless we're looking for them in a particular spot. But if they're moving, or at least waving their arms, we see them much quicker, right? Because again, we're tuned from, from long ago to be in tune with movement. Okay, so what have you probably know, right? What is TZAQ? All right. Oops, need some more here. Okay, flashing lights. So, all this stuff in marketing. Direction's another one. All right, or implied direction. All right, so we have an arrow here. Okay, down to here. All right. And, your eyes went here like it's supposed to. Oh, there's some direction, arrow there. There's the point, and you looked at there. And I know it was alone on the screen for a little bit on purpose, and you probably was wondering, what the hell is T7AQ? Doesn't mean anything. Okay, and I think I have another ad with direction right here. So here's a poster. Right, and here's number 1. So it doesn't have to be just a line, and it gives you this thing, and you kind of follow along, an arrow or 2. Oh, I'm gonna go over here, wander around 3, right, in order 1, 2, and 3. And so, it's a nice use of direction to make sure you kind of get those steps properly. All right, so now we have some more. Let me go through this right here. Catch back up. All right, so I'm gonna keep flipping back and forth between YouTube and this. I can't be avoided. At least I don't know how to avoid it. All right, so Apple.
Buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, mail, upgrade it, charge it, point it, zoom it, press it, snap it, work it, quick erase it. Technologic. Buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, mail, upgrade it, charge it, point it, zoom it, press it, snap it, work it, quick erase it, write it, cut it, paste it, save it, load it, check it, quick rewrite it. Buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, mail, upgrade it, charge it, point it, zoom it.
Okay, so when Apple, developed iPod and iTunes, they ran a whole series of ads like that for a while. I think they're really, they're really good. Just look at their whole success, right? Even before phones had music, with iPods and iTunes, and the world's largest distributor of music, all right? And they actually have a bunch of different things going on in there. I could have picked out a couple, all right? Oops, but... a big one in that is the idea of contrast, right? It's, the people, it's just an outline of them and in black against these bright colors. And so anytime, we see a lot of contrast, that stands out compared to everything else around it. We normally pay attention to it. Sometimes you've seen pictures of people where they cut their face in half, and it's the old, with wrinkles, and then they use a new wrinkle cream, and they have, or Botox or whatever it is, and they have no wrinkles at all, right? So contrast, grabs our attention, and that means that's where our eyes go if it's an ad, and then we're more likely to pay attention to what's there, and we're exposed to it, and we have a chance to go on and, paying attention to it means we're going to start to process the information that's there. All right, let's do the next one, even though you know what they are if you look quickly. Oh, I don't need to do this. I have it on YouTube. That's right. There's McDonald's. All right. What do you think they're advertising here? Not French fries, but what? When they put Wi-Fi in, right? Down at the bottom, free Wi-Fi. So what makes this effective? Why do your eyes go right to the French fries? Well, that's called isolation. Then you put, a few stimuli in one place and nothing around it. Your eyes have nowhere else to go. It's just red. And I could look at the corner and see the McDonald's, but it's smaller and it's not in the middle. So almost each time, my eyes are going to go there. All right? And actually, I'll just stay on YouTube and we'll go through these right here. Okay, so that's another one. All right, so this is for a mini jam box by Jawbone. No longer around, of course, but kind of cool ad. All right, and what do you see? Guy's got a band inside his ear. All right, weird, strange, maybe kind of funny. All right, but the other thing is novelty. All right, and that's when you see things that don't meet your expectations. You wouldn't expect to see a bunch of people in somebody's ear. All right, and so, that's another one, that really works well. So when you see something that you don't expect, replacing something you do expect, you tend to pay attention to it because you have to figure it out. What the heck's going on? Right? And that causes you to, invest cognitive resources into that. All right, and this one's kind of... Now, I know that's kind of a lame ringtone, but, the idea is that, I think that's all of them, yeah, is that there are certain stimuli that we learn to pay attention to, all right? And so it captures our attention. And so, sirens, right? When we're driving, we know, hey, we gotta look around. There's an ambulance, a cop car coming, something. Telephone ringing, a whistle, all right, baby crying, right? You kind of, as a parent, you learn your babies, your kids, how they cry, screaming. But there are different stimuli, right? Even, scammers would try to use that when some of the emails, or if they, have a website and they say, you're being under attack, by a virus. Click here, some people get all flustered. Oh my God, and they got to click something. So, there's things we've learned to pay attention to. So back in the day, people would have a siren, or they'd have a telephone ringing in the beginning of like a TV commercial or a radio ad, especially, to try to kind of just get you to kind of pay attention, or a siren. Woo, woo. And then, you might focus just a little bit more on that, and they have their chance to try to, earn your attention to get you to pay even, spend more cognitive resources on it. Okay, so that's attention. So the idea is we're exposed to something. We, involuntarily or voluntarily, we've kind of decided selectively to go ahead and let it proceed to our attention. We take it in, we make some sense of it, but we have to figure out, hey, are we going to continue to dedicate, our limited thinking, on this or not? And then if we decide to, further process it, then we come to comprehension, perception, interpretation. In other words, what we have to do is we have to attach some meaning to this. What the heck is this? What does this mean? What's it mean for me, really? That's really what we need to figure out, right? It's how does this affect me? And so forth, all right? There's been a whole bunch of different ways to approach this. They're all relatively valid. Some, they're not necessarily what exactly happens in your brain, but it's as if, your brain does these things. And that's just as valid, especially because we're not really interested in being, neurologists or, neuropsychologists or whatever they're called. All right. We want to know kind of how people think and how to influence it. All right. So as long as it works as if, we're in pretty good shape, and we don't need too much of the technical stuff. Though I will say, and I'll try to include this in the last module if we have time, is, there's been a lot of research in, neuromarketing, right? Understanding how the brain works, humor, different parts of the brain, what's attached to them, emotion and everything, and, designing marketing communications, to it's kind of scary to pull out the emotions that they want, because there are certain triggers that seem to do that, and so forth, and they target different parts of the brain. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. So we're going to kind of look at comprehension really broadly first. So 3 dimensions to comprehension. All right. Each of these can be a continuum, right? So even though we're saying, there's these 3 things, there's a range from high to low and every place in between. All right. So we can think about automatic and deliberate. So, automatic comprehension means it's kind of in one ear and we get it, right? But we don't pay attention to it. It just kind of happens, right? Until you've seen it many, many times, and then all of a sudden you know something. But you never made a deliberate thought or process or effort to say, I want to learn what that is. Okay? Sometimes it's deliberate. Like this material. Hopefully you're deliberately trying to think, okay, I want to learn this, what we're doing. It's probably going to be, related to our project. And yes, it will be. And on a test, yes, it will be. All right, and so forth. So it can be very deliberate and somewhere in between. Right, and so deliberate, consciously thinking about it, trying to create new associations. Right, that's what learning is. Right, to some degree. Though we learn without thinking about it. All right, shallow meaning, deep meaning. This one that always kind of makes me. It's kind of funny. There was a Saturday Night Live thing about shallow meaning one time. So shallow meaning just means it's kind of in one ear and out the other. It doesn't impact us. It's not that important, okay? And deep meaning means it's kind of like, shallow meaning probably fits everything. It's already like that. Deep meaning means it's profound, okay? Like we go, oh, now I get it, okay? And so forth, all right? Okay? Right? Whatever, right? And then meaning, okay? Meaningful encoding, right? Right, we encode it in some way that's meaningful to us, and it's like, oh yeah, now I get it. All right, and we have those moments, right? It might be in the sport you're playing, and you learn a new technique, and you finally master it, and you see you weren't really sure why the coach was telling you, and then you get it, and you do it, and it works. It's like, oh, now I get it. All right, and so forth. All right, and little elaboration and high elaboration. So the question is what's elaboration? All right. So elaboration is kind of the degree with which you kind of wrestle with it and as time it spends activated in your memory and how much you connect it with other beliefs, right? So, its associations are elaborate, right? It's connected to different things, all right? And, whether it's new knowledge that gets attached to stuff, you restructure your existing knowledge, you're building association, you're updating your knowledge structures. All right, so little elaboration, I already know it, doesn't change anything, fine, it reinforces it perhaps, but in high elaboration, you're redoing things, you're saying, okay, I know where this fits in, and it's like another piece in a puzzle that's important to you. So these 3 dimensions, and why are they important? They affect our ability to remember a stimulus. The greater, and this is kind of obvious, the more deliberate the processing of it is, our awareness of it, thinking about it, the more memorable. The deeper, the more important the meaning, the more profound, the more memorable. The more we elaborate, the more memorable. So if it's, automatic processing, shallow meaning, we don't elaborate very much, we're not going to remember it. All right? Maybe half the commercials that if you watch it, Netflix with the ads now, you're not going to remember them. I don't remember them, right? Even if you try to remember, the next day, what ads did I see? You're not even sure if you saw them, when you saw them. You saw them sometime, but you're not sure where, right? So without those factors, the more you have those 3 factors in concert, the more memorable the stimulus. And that stimulus is probably your brand, all right? So, you need to get people to think, all right? And then you need to get people to elaborate, and you need to, somehow affect it from means to end change, provide meaningful benefits that lead to emotional benefits and connect to people's values. All right. So there have been a lot of different approaches to comprehension. All right. So we're going to go through those. We're going to go through them pretty quickly. They're all relatively valid. They're all part of this kind of overall thing of how we think and stuff. They're just kind of one piece of the whole puzzle, so to speak, at least to me. So we're not going to look at learning theory now, but you guys have had this, the 3 of them are implicit cognition. We learn without being, aware of it. A lot of that you can think of like classical conditioning to some degree, Pavlov's dog, operant conditioning. That's reinforcement. If you ever heard B.F. Skinner, it's just, hey, you do something, I give you a reward. You do something I don't like, you get punished. And you learn pretty quickly. Okay? And then vicarious modeling. And all that means, vicarious means that you're kind of living through another person, right? So, helicopter parents are vicariously living through their children, especially in sports, right? Because they're experiencing, reliving their childhood or things that they wish they were able to do as a kid, and they get over involved with that. So those we'll talk about later, or they'll also be in this module, but I'm not going to do a separate video for them because there's plenty of videos on them online already. I don't need to do that. We're going to look at top-down versus bottom-up processing, Gestalt psychology briefly, which is just really interesting, used a lot today, not necessarily in psychology, but in communications and graphic design. Okay, and then we won't look at the elaboration likelihood model yet. I'll do a separate one on that because that's what your project is largely based upon, though it will incorporate everything in all the videos we've had and will have. Okay, top-down processing. Okay, so we use categorization to help us identify and understand stimuli quickly. So what does that mean? So basically we break many of the different stimuli that we encounter often into groups, into categories, like cars. All right, and we know cars might be different than pickup trucks and so forth. And, all that kind of stuff. All right, so what a student is, right, and looks like, and all this kind of stuff, and what a professor looks like, or an administrator looks like, and stuff like that. So we have this kind of, these categories, all right, in which, we understand what are the most common and important characteristics that kind of identify them. All right, so that's what we do. We compare stimuli with representations in our memory that are characteristics of the type of stimuli, right? So we have a schema, and our brain is able to quickly figure out, oh, that's a dog, that's a cat, right? And if ever, and so forth. And then all that schema, right, which we talked about in the previous video, all those, parts of all those associations that make up a dog or a cat, all right, they're available. We can access them in our brain. They're already there. Like, oh, I know, right? And why did we develop this? Because it enables us to process information so much more quickly. All right? Okay? All right? And so, the greater the fit between I'm looking at something, oh, that's definitely a dog. Okay? Is it a dog or is it a pig? I'm not sure. All right, then it's a little harder to fit it in there, right? But the greater the degree of fit, the faster we're going to be understand what it is or reach a conclusion, and we'll know more about it that much more quickly. All right? So you can think about this, like what comes to your mind first? A luxury car. What do you think of? A brand? Okay, a picture? A cheap hotel? Fast food restaurant. What comes to mind first? Most people's McDonald's. All right? You guys, it could be Chick-fil-A. All right? Fancy restaurant. Jewelry store. A cell phone. Oh, it's going to be an iPhone, right? A picture of an iPhone right in your head. Boom. Right? A drone. Right? You probably have a picture. Don't really know a manufacturer and stuff. All right? Okay? So we can use different types of representations to kind of be the model for that categorization. Like, what does a student look like? All right? So an exemplar, what does a luxury car look like? And we might say, gee, a luxury car is a black Mercedes sedan. That might be it for me. Okay? And so that's an actual object, right? Fast food restaurant, what pops in people's mind, McDonald's, right? That's an exemplar. It's a real thing and all that kind of stuff there. All right? And so that's what pops in our mind. Okay? So what we're looking at kind of looks like a McDonald's. All right? It's got counters and, fast food, blah, blah, blah. That's great. All right? We know what it is. You can also, all right? So those are some of the answers for me, right? A Mercedes is a car, cheap hotel is a Econo Lodge, a McDonald's, Mill on the River was a restaurant where we used to live, jewelry store, Hanush, iPhone, Mavic. I have to know that for a drone. All right, because my son had a drone. All right. The other way to think about them is prototypes. All right. So prototype is one you kind of make up yourself, and it's not a whole unit of just itself, but it might be maybe for a, a luxury car. Maybe it's like a German sports car convertible, all right, in the color red. And, it's got these things that all fit there, but it's not from a particular brand, right? It's all these things that you kind of have in your head. These are the features that a fancy luxury car might have. And so I should have some examples here, right? Exotic name, like maybe it's going to have a name like Maserati or Ferrari, Lamborghini, has an Italian name, and it's European made, and there's going to be lots of wet leather and wood trim. It's going to be a convertible. So if somebody asks me what's a luxury car look like to you, I would say like those things. It's got some cool name and stuff. Fast food restaurant, we all know what they have, right? Drive-through counters, low quality food, dirty tables, low prices. Okay, maybe long lines, etc. And there's a whole bunch of examples. So we have either exemplars or prototypes. All right, exemplars are actual things, that represent the objects, that represent the category, and then we have these things that are a collection of different features, but they're not one particular brand. So, who is the guy in the blue leather jacket? Giving that guy, I guess, a purple nurple would be my guess, right? Poor kid, right? Right? So, if you had to categorize this, right? Okay? Top-down processing, right? Or large chunk processing occurs when we successfully match a stimulus with our schema, right? And this is categorization, all right? And so a large male walking down the hallway at college or high school, probably a football player. Could be a rugby player, but probably a football player, picking on some other kid, all right? Right? And so what happens in top-down processing is when we get a match, oh, it's a football player, that jerky football player, right? We tend to stop really paying attention. We stop processing, noticing actual details about the stimuli, and we just kind of go with the rest of our schema it just fills everything in. All right, it's kind of like, when you're buying something online and you type your email address in and then Google will automatically fill everything else. That's what this is. Okay, but it was all the characteristics of the category. All right, our prototype or our exemplar. All right, and this is what stereotypes are. Okay, that's why we have stereotypes. All right, many times stereotypes are negative. Right, and that's not a good thing. But the reason we have the stuff is it developed this way. Our brain over, many years, thousands of years, is because it enables us to process information really quickly, so we can, be safe in our environment and take advantage of any resources that are available to us. All right, so we might say, oh, it's a football player, and then we think he's not very bright. He's, a jerk, not very sensitive, right? Okay, and so forth, right? And, whether they're positive or negative characteristics about them, they're already there. Oh, that's what they're like, okay? Right? If I said a blonde, right? You might say, oh, just a dumb blonde, boom. And they don't necessarily have to be, about people, right? Fast food restaurant, we know, okay? What it is, all right? Japanese car. All right, okay. We have an idea. All right. All right, so now in marketing, I'm going to go to YouTube here. Some of this, how do you take advantage of that? If that's something that people tend to have, all right? Anybody know what brand of car this is? All right. Looks pretty nice. Looks like a big black luxury car, right? It's got this wing thing here, kind of like a Bentley. It's not a Bentley. It's a Hyundai. It's not a Hyundai anymore, but it's the same company. It's a Genesis. All right, black Genesis sedan. Oh, and what do we have there? My gosh, a black Mercedes sedan. They look kind of alike, right? Black, right? Same shape, big. a pretty big grill, okay? And yeah, this one has the pop-up thing. That's definitely a Mercedes thing, but it has its little logo. It's not little, but its logo right here. And now Genesis, their grills are gigantic. Everybody thinks bigger is better, I guess. All right, but hey, so it's saying what? Hey, if we look like a Mercedes, all right, then there's a good chance people are gonna put us in that same category, with a little help in advertising and stuff like that, and they'll make the same assumptions. Hey, we're gonna have a nice ride. It's gonna impress others. It's gonna be comfortable, luxury, all these fine touches, and etc. And actually, I couldn't find a better picture than a Genesis, but that's what Lexus did. That's how Lexus became the number one, luxury car in the U.S. They first came out. They looked like big black Mercedes or BMWs, and that's what they did. And of course, everybody knew Lexus was made by Toyota, and they're thinking, boy, it's going to be even more reliable. But it's still a Lexus, because you had to go to their own dealership where they treated you like you were at a Mercedes dealership or BMW dealership, not a Toyota dealership, and so forth. So it's good for copycat. All right. Another example, right? Apple's so popular, and this has probably calmed down, but especially when, iPods and stuff, iHome, right? Everybody would put a little lowercase I in front of their thing, and, people would might even assume it was from Apple, all right? But you just, made people more comfortable to copy them. It's going to be perfect for my new iPod, my new iPhone, all right? And so forth, okay? And those are Apple AirPods. How many people have copied that style, right? This is even iHome, right? They're pink, but, long, dangly thing, right? Just living off the, assumptions that people have, those, beliefs in their categorization about, Apple trying to copycat and get the same benefits. Now, what the hell is that? Okay, I'm going to play the video for you. I'm not sure I did this one. Is it a video? Here we go. Because there's actually a
Hyundai Santa Fe versus Subaru Outback. Hyundai Santa Fe wins.
Oh, sorry, not what I wanted. I'm not going to subject you to that. You can watch it. It's a old Saturday Night Live skit with Bill Murray and Steve Martin, and they're just saying, what the hell is that? All right? So let me go back to the PowerPoint here. All right? So what is that? Okay? Is it a skateboard? Is it a hoverboard? What is it? It's called a one wheel. All right? Okay? It's not a Segway, it's not a skateboard, it's not a giant, whatever that is for going off-road, okay? It's not a hoverboard, it's a one-wheel, all right? And so what happens when you see something that doesn't fit in a category? What do you have to do? Well, you have to figure it out, especially if you're at all interested, and because it doesn't fit in anything. And, this is a thing. It's electric, goes fast, they're expensive. Matter of fact, they just recalled, I don't know if it's the end of the company, it's 3 million of them. All right? They recalled them. One Wheel is the name of the company. You can see it right here. One Wheel. All right? And they go fast, 20 miles an hour. All right? And there's been a whole bunch of people with horrible accidents, deaths, and everything because it just goes really fast. And you control it by leaning and stuff, so people must be having problems. Didn't say there was any problems with it in terms of it was not made correctly or manufacturing defects and everything. But it looks kind of cool. But I don't think I have enough guts to get on one. I'm not into motorcycles, right? But what happens when you get something new is you got to figure out what it is, all right? Because you've never seen it before. So bottom-up processing occurs when we can't successfully categorize stuff. Oh, what is that? Okay, all right, and so forth. So, we have to be motivated to figure out what it is. Otherwise, we go, I don't care. But it's like when maybe you saw like the first like, three-wheeled motorcycles, tricycles, trikes, Polaris, whatever they are. Okay, Can-Am, what are they? Okay, and they're not cars, they're not motorcycles. You have to make them their own thing. Okay, so you start a new category. All right, and so to do that, okay, you have to figure it out. So you literally pay a lot more attention. So that was the water running upstairs and the pipes is kind of noisy. But anyway, so we have to figure out what it is and we create a new category if we're motivated. If we don't really care, we're like, oh, what the heck, right? Shallow meaning, all right? Automatic, processing. We don't no involvement. We really don't care. All right? Right, so, Apple iTouch, iPad, what is it? Okay. We probably already had, a different category in our mind. All right. So if we process that and create a new category, one, it makes it more memorable. Oh, I know. I saw one of those things. Okay. All right. And so there's some really cool marketing implications. Right. So greater memorability. All right. Because it's something new and different. Right. So that's why marketers are always trying to make things look new and different. That's a really good strategy. All right. And if it is a new category for enough people, for a sports utility vehicle, all right, first minivan, all right, then your brand becomes the exemplar. Often. You're the leader, right? So the characteristics, the features, the benefits, the positioning, you have first crack at all of that. And everybody else is the follower. And so if you're able to launch your product well and become successful, quickly ahead of your competition, those are your first mover benefits, you're in a really strong position. And, most companies that go first and survive, through the product life cycle, up to close to maturity, they're all market leaders, unless there's a real change in, technology or something like that down the road and so forth. All right, and McDonald's, Under Armour, Jell-O, Kleenex, FedEx, iPod, GoPro, Uber, Airbnb, Red Bull, Jeep, right? They kind of own stuff. Now, hey, Jeep's getting, gonna get a run for money from Ford Bronco, which was around before, but still, they're lead right there, and they were the first from World War II. Under Armour, performance gear, they do well. They've lost market share to everybody else, but also Lululemon, some internet brands haven't done as well in other areas, especially shoes and footwear and cleats, but they're still, they own that. FedEx, lots of competition. UPS, a little bit harder to distinguish them, but they were the first, and they're probably still the most profitable. All right, and obviously McDonald's, the world's largest restaurant. Okay, so the question is, you have to be able to motivate people. Right, because it's work. You have to figure it out. What is it? It's this thing, okay, and especially if it's technological and the differences aren't clear, what it does isn't really clear, okay, how it's different in a meaningful and enjoyable way, people aren't going to invest the time. All right. So, selective comprehension, right? So we said selective is through everything, right? We pick and choose. All right. And, we're not always conscious of that, but we certainly do. All right. So we tend to attach meaning in a way that fits our existing beliefs. Confirmation bias. All right. We're going to believe things, okay, especially ambiguous things that where it's not really clear. We're going to see things our ways. Okay. And now you can think about politics nowadays, and it's rife with confirmation bias. Nobody believes the other side has anything meaningful to offer, and it's just me, you suck, we're great. All right, we see what we want. All right, and this implies we're inherently doomed to bias. Sorry to be so negative, but hey, so we want to see the world in a way that's consistent with our beliefs. Yeah, if there's stuff that is really positive for us, we'll change our beliefs probably pretty quickly. But negative, not really. We hold on. Okay, we hold on to those things because we believe them. They're important to us. And, there's enough research that shows that without us consciously being aware of it, we get a little more positive feeling, a little positive affect when things are confirmed. I know this. My view of the world is right. You can feel a little smug, or even arrogant because, yeah, I got it. All right. So what affects selective comprehension? Oh, our current needs. What we need. Okay? And so sometimes people flip because their needs flip. It's not that they really believe anything different, just their needs flip, so they change their tune. All right? Consistency with our current belief. That's confirmation bias. All right? We're vigilant. We seek out stuff, right? Think of all the people who, whether you're an anti-vaxxer or you believe in vaccines and stuff like that, there's enough scientific data out there, results, anecdotal data, meaning people just saying stuff. You can find whatever you want, right? And one of this is an aside, but one of the problems that I think that we have right now is, misinformation or disinformation. And you can really, the media is not the only source of it, but, what's happened is the different news sources, the different companies, they have a target market, an audience. And, to stay profitable, they need to grow their target market, or at least hold on to them. And the best way to do that, give them information they want. Feed their confirmation bias. And so, this stuff, we're really vigilant. Oh yeah, more support. Yeah, see, I was right. Of course, those damn conservatives or those damn liberals, okay, wokeism or whatever it is. All right. Okay, and those are just more examples of it. All right. So we tend to, most judgments tend to serve our ego. We don't want to feel bad. Yeah, I went to a Gold Star meeting. I didn't wear a mask because people want to come up and kiss me, and they do. I think that was like Trump said that or something. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because we'll do a separate video on elaboration likelihood model, which combines a lot of this stuff, and we'll go over Gestalt because it's not quite as important in terms of comprehension. But I'm going to stop there. I'll create another video about elaboration likelihood model, which will feed nicely and tie all this information together in a way that can be easily applied to marketing communications, and business.